Dust choked the gallows shadow, but Clara May's heart defied the noose around her throat. Mesquite dust swirled like restless spirits beneath cedar planks carved for her end. She stood on the trapdoor, wrists bound by hemp that bit her skin, scent of sage's ashes mingling with fear. Sheriff Amos Tate's spurs rasped on oak steps as he read her charges. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've got something extra special saved just for you. Clara May of Dusty Hollow, he intoned, voice brittle as desert bone. You are condemned for practicing devil's medicine. You healed with herbs forbidden by God and man. You stand judged. Dr. Elias Holt's gaze was ice and scorn as he leaned forward. She cured my brother's fever with willow bark. He nearly died. Each word fell like judgment's hammer. Clara's spine stiffened. She tasted ash and remembered her mother's gentle hands weaving peppermint and willow into salves. Her mother had died fleeing a fever, whispered out a mortal world by her own healing art. Clara inhaled the dry air and raised her chin. She would not beg for mercy from those who feared what they could not name. She closed her eyes, recalling canyon winds that once carried laughter. Now only jibing tongues filled the square. Witch, devil's friend. The hemp tightened. Would grain cut her with every breath? She refused to weep. Let her end as she lived, unyielding. Then came a crack like a thunderclap. Bowstrings cry. The noose fell away with a splintered tear. Clara lurched free as the trapdoor snapped shut. A second arrow hammered the upright beam. Sheriff and doctor staggered back in shock. Sky! The hawk roosting atop the gallows launched into a swirl of ebony wings, calling out in wild alarm. Clara stumbled amid chaos. The sheriff's shout rent the air. After her? Shoot that savage defender. Clara's gaze locked on the forest of rising rifles. Momentarily paralyzed, she watched a lone figure step through haze. Tall, lean, clad in buckskins dyed with clay and bloodroot. His hair was braided with sinew and cedar bark, eyes dark as obsidian flare beneath high cheekbones scarred by vision's path. The man raised his bow. His arms moved with hunted grace. Clara staggered to his side as he knelt to cut her bonds with a flint blade. The hemp dropped to her knees. Rope fibers fraying like lost hope. He pressed a gloved hand to her waist, a silent vow of protection, and guided her behind a fallen wagon wheel. Rifle reports cracked cedar wood. Splitters flew like brittle petals. Clara pressed her cheek to the stranger's horsehide coat, breath thundering. His heartbeat thundered in his chest, a primal drum that matched her own. No words passed, only the wind's howl. A third arrow embedded in Sheriff Tate's belt buckle, pinning coat to sash. Tate cursed and fumbled for his colt. The stranger let loose another arrow, smashing the barrel into iron shards. The sheriff reeled back, eyes wide in disbelief. Dr. Holt tripped over his own trembling feet, scowl cracked by dawning panic. The stranger rose, hoisted Clara onto a sorrel mare, and vaulted into saddle with her clutch behind. Her hands were bruised, fingers trembling against saddle horn. He pressed his arm across her waist, narrowing distance to shield her from lead and malice. She tasted cedar and sweat on his coat, Trust's first bitter draft. The mare bolted, hooves hammering stone. Clara closed her eyes, each jolt blurring the hangman's scaffold until only pounding heart and wind remained. She inhaled dust's acrid sting, felt rope's memory fading in adrenaline's fire. They thundered through the dusty square, leaving townsfolk in shouting knots. Sheriff and posse fanned out, Winchester barrels glinting. Clara glimpsed Dr. Holt's black coat as it faltered behind a water trough, pistol dangling worthless in his hand. The mare veered into a narrow arroyo line with brittle ocotillo and cedar brush. Clara peered back. Posse lanterns bobbed like fireflies below, shadows stalking her fleeting form. The stranger guided the horse deeper into canyon arms, where red rock walls rose like silent sentinels. Clara's chest heaved. She pressed a hand to her throat's bruised curve, taste of copper heavy on her tongue. The stranger dismounted and knelt, removing a sage-smeared poultice from his satchel. Gently, he applied it to her wound, cloth pressing cool mercy against broken flesh. Clara closed her eyes, sensation blooming between pain and relief. He opened his satchel again and produced a woven bracelet of dyed deer hide and crimson sinew, beads of turquoise and shell knotted into patterns of healing. He slid it onto Clara's wrist, fingers brushing her pulse. No words, only the loom of bond forged in arrow flight and medicine's grace. Clara pressed the bracelet to her lips. Though she could not speak his tongue, she bowed her head in gratitude. He lifted his hand, offering reins. Clara mounted behind him, safety embodied in saddle's cradle. Together they rode under cedar shadows into night's deep veil, hoofbeats echoing freedom's song. The canyon opened to a ribbon of cottonwoods, their leaves whispering secrets of water's promise. Clara leaned into him, heart settling in companion's steadfast form. He whispered in soft Comanche syllables, lullaby of earth and sky. She reached for the mare's mane, steady but trembling. Outside that hush, hoofbeats thundered near, Tate's vengeance riding on ragged lantern light. Clara clasped her locket and side coat, mother's gift in this stranger's trust entwined in woven knot. The Comanche strung another arrow, knocked swift grace. The posse's lanterns flared at canyon rim, desperate fire in the dark. He raised bow, whispered, choose, live, and loosed arrow into the night's teeth. Clara clung to saddle as arrows shattered lantern glass, scattering sparks that died like fallen stars. The posse recoiled, their shouts swallowed by canyon wind. The mare sprang forward, carrying them beyond execution's shadow. In the hush before dawn's reckoning, Clara May close her eyes and breathe sage-scented promise. Beneath moon and whispering cottonwoods, she dared a hope, and in her sleep-haunted heart blossomed trust, woven like the bracelet on her wrist, binding healer to savage, slave to freedom, life to hope. In dusty Hollow's canyon hush, the posse's hoofbeats thunder closer, and only arrows, sage, and a stranger's mercy could carry Clara May beyond a hangman's reach into part two's flight through fire. Red rock burned under Arizona sun, but Clara May clung to a stranger's saddle, as if it were salvation's last thread. Canyon walls glowed molten in midday light. Ocotillo and sage clustered in stubborn defiance. Sky the Hawk wheeled overhead, casting spinning shadows across sandstone. Clara pressed her cheek into rough horsehide, breath ragged with adrenaline and cedar sweat. Behind them, the thunder of hoofbeats and the crack of Winchester rifle warned that Sheriff Amos Tate's posse shadowed their flight. Her pulse hammered promise, live, Clara, live. They slipped into a narrow canyon where sun-drenched walls cooled beneath flickering cottonwood leaves. Mesquite roots snaked through red soil, shaping secret paths. Clara's legs nearly buckled with exhaustion, but Red Hawk guided the sorrel mare with sure command. Each hoof fall was a prayer whispered on dusty wind. He led her to a spring hidden in a cleft of stone, water murmuring like last year's lullaby. Clara dismounted, trembling, and knelt at the pool's edge. He laid a sage-smeared poultice across her rope-burned wrist, fingers deft and calm. Sage curled like whispered prayers as he bound her flesh with woven willow strips. Clara closed her eyes, scented by cedar smoke and earth's raw breath. She felt warmed bloom beneath her skin, each knot of willow a mother's blessing. She recalled her own mother's teacher, Blue Star, a Comanche healer whose songs of mint and yucca had eased fevered children. Her heart ached with memory. Mother's gentle voice amid desert twilight before fear's accusations stole her life. Now the ritual passed from Blue Star's hands to this man's. Red Hawk's scarred cheek flexed as he applied poultice. His high cheekbones and obsidian eyes softened with compassion's weight. Clara watched him murmur in low Comanche syllables, prayers that undulated like creek water over stones. His bow lay at rest. He cared for her wounds with healer's grace rather than warrior's blade. In that moment, Clara felt roots reach out from two worlds, mother's memory and Comanche spirit entwined in his steady gaze. She lifted her hand to his forearm and pressed a woven bracelet against his sinew-wrapped wrist. Above, Sky's keen cry cut canyon hush. Clara sprang to attention as the hawks circled low, talons extended in warning. The posse's distant shouts rattled loose stones, Sheriff Tate's corrupted oath echoing through stone corridors. Dr. Holt's sneer drifted on wind. She's a witch, pure evil. Clara's chest tightened, but Red Hawk grabbed her reins and urged her into deeper shadow. Each step carried them farther from execution's plank, but the chase ground toward them with unrelenting rhythm. They skirted a ledge where brittle sandstone overhung a dark pool. Red Hawk crushed dried sage leaves in his palm and scattered them across the earth. Smoke spiraled upward, swirling in ghostly coils. Below, the posse's horses reared and wheeled, nostrils flaring in panic. Clara watched hooves dance in dust. Each stamping foot answered Sage's silent command. Fear bowed before ritual's power, horses balking at smoke's embrace. Red Hawk gripped her wrist and murmured, "Stay close." Voice of gentle thunder. Clara slid from the saddle, pressing supple poultice between woven willow fingers and shaking from exertion and relief. She knelt beside the smoldering sage patch, inhaling fragrant warmth that knotted around fear. She pressed the bracelet's beads, a mother's design of turquoise and shell, against her lips, tasting memory's echo. The poultice eased burn's edge. She traced each willow knot, weaving her own vow of survival into the bracelet's loop. A distant lantern glinted beyond in a royal bend. Clara froze, chest punctuated by the promise of capture. Red Hawk knocked an arrow, silhouette poised in oilcloth twilight. He held the bowstring taut as memory's cord, arrowhead glinting like morning's first star. Clara watched his steady breath, each exhale a tether anchoring her to hope. He released. The arrow smashed a stone cap near the lantern, sending sparks scattering like fireflies. The posse's horses stamped in startled protest beneath lantern's glow. Shouts echoed hollow against canyon walls. Clara's pulse steadied in the hush that followed. She climbed back into the saddle, pressing blanket-wrapped wrist to comfort's warmth. Red Hawk guided the mare through a narrow channel where cedar sap dripped like tears. His hand brushed her shoulder, not merely protective, but trusting gesture woven in two souls' bond. They emerged onto a rocky bench overlooking dust-choked plains. The sun dipped behind mesa, painting blood-red sky. Clara pressed her face into Red Hawk's back, breath matching his as they surveyed the horizon. Sky glided across fading light, wings beating caution's cadence. Clara pressed her fingers to the woven bracelet again, symbol of mother's teachings and this healer's mercy entwined. Red Hawk spoke her name in low tone, "Clara." His voice carried over canyon floor like drumbeat of ancestors. She blinked tears of gratitude and fear. Words faltered on her lips. She only nodded, drawing strength from his claim of her. He guided the mare toward a hidden wash lined with brittle tamarisk, promised shelter in its dense shade. As they slipped beneath tamarisk's fringe, the posse's lantern glowed again. Tiny star pursuits intent. Clara's breath hitched. Red Hawk reined her mount and scanned dusk's deepening. He removed the bowstring and replaced it with a gentle brush of sage smoke against the air, ritual's lullaby. Clara watched embers waver, each tiny flame a prayer for deliverance. They pressed on through canyon's narrowing cradle, the hush of night swallowing hoofbeats. Clara felt each heartbeat echo like falling water. Sage drifted in the air, cedar and earthsome weaving around their flight. Sky soared above, silhouette trimming stars. Clara closed her eyes, clutching her wound and her bracelet. Wombed a memory's seed and future's promise. The lantern glint in the canyon mouth pulsed once more. Clara opened her eyes. Red Hawk's jaw set beneath moonlight. He reached behind his belt and knocked a final arrow, whispering, "Hold fast." Clara braced herself as the shadows stirred and pursuit's flame flared again at the canyon's rim. In the canyon's narrowing hush, a single lantern flickered. Posse's final threat closing in, and only Sage's smoke woven bracelet, and a warrior's mercy could carry Clara May beyond capture into Part 3's Hidden Valley. Cottonwoods whisper in the sacred valley, but Clara May braced for fire's threat as she rode beneath fluttering leaves. Dawn's light filtered through trembling branches, dappling red rock with patterns of shade and gold. The air smelled of damp earth and cedar resin. Clara pressed a woven bracelet against her palm, turquoise and shell beads warming beneath her fingers, promise of her mother's Comanche teachings woven with Red Hawk's trust. Each heartbeat echoed against canyon walls like distant drums. They entered a grove where ancient petroglyphs carved in sandstone told tales of healing and struggle. Figures of hunters and healers danced in faded lines. Clara traced a finger along the glyph of a hawk-winged figure and bowed her head. Her mother, Blue Star's apprentice, had shared these stories by firelight. Clara closed her eyes, breath steadying in cedar-scented breeze. Red Hawk knelt before her, nodding as if her silent devotion sustained two worlds. Sky the hawk lay at Clara's feet, feathers stained with blood. The Comanche built a small fire of cottonwood bark and mesquite sticks, embers glowing like resting hearts. Clara knelt and gently lifted the hawk's wing. A posse bullet had torn through feather and flesh. Skies dark I met Clara's, wild fear softened by her touch. Red Hawk murmured a chant, voice low as creek water over stones. Clara unwrapped a claw from her satchel, sage and yarrow poultice mixed with cedar oil, and pressed it to the hawk's wound. Smoke curled like ancestral vows as she bound wing with willow strips. Sky's breathing slowed beneath each careful knot. Clara breathed in the healing herb's warmth and remembered her mother's final lesson. Heal with heart, child. She closed her eyes, pressing the hawk's feathers in gentle gratitude. Red Hawk watched, pride and concern flickering in his obsidian gaze. He bowed his head and pressed cedar bark against the wound to staunch bleeding. Clara laid her hand on his forearm, beadwork glinting in dawn's glow. Trust deepened between healer and healer. They fashioned a makeshift sling for Sky's wing and lifted him to a shaded ledge. The hawk blinked, talons curling around Clara's finger for strength before taking perch. Sky's steady gaze followed them as they rose for the next challenge. Clara's heart vaulted as rifle fire cracked through cottonwood shade. Red Hawk pressed her to his side, hand firm on her wrist. He knocked an arrow and loosed at the valley rim, an ember defiance. Clara ducked behind a boulder as bullets shredded brittle leaves overhead. Red Hawk advanced, shield and bowsmith in one. Each arrow carved of cedar and flint. Clara's breath stung in throat's bruise. She pressed her palm to the wound on her mother's gift, bracelets looped, pulsing with shared protection. A flash of black coat. Dr. Elias Holt and Deputy Harper on horseback, Winchester leveled. Holt's spectacles glinted in filtered light. Clara recognized fear's source, his prejudice and ambition to control Desert Hollow through persecution. Holt spat, "Bring her back. Tate demands justice." The posse cheered, spurs singing against wood. Clara faltered until Red Hawk's strong voice cut through rifle's roar. "Stay strong." He charged forward, bow raised in sacred gesture. Clara sprinted to his side, eyes wide beneath cottonwood shade. She saw blood seep through his buckskin coat. An arrow had struck his shoulder. Shock pierced her. Red Hawk wrenched loose arrow, gritted teeth against pain. Clara knelt and pressed a fresh poultice of yarrow and mint to the wound. Her mother's voice stirred in her mind. Bind bleeding, honor life. She tied knots with trembling fingers, weaving willow and sage into a healer's seal. Red Hawk's head bent, jaw clenched in silent fire. He gripped her shoulder, sharing agony and gratitude. No words passed, their bond forged in adversity's crucible. The posse's hoofbeats thundered closer, eager for victory. From the thicket emerged Jed Harper, townsman turned ally, hat doffed, expression solemn. He carried a lantern and a leather satchel filled with water and flannel. "Red Hawk," Jed said, voice hushed his prayer. "Tate plans to burn this valley's dry grasses and smoke you out." He pressed a folded oilcloth map into Clara's hand. lines of cottonwood groves and hidden springs. Clara unfolded it, tracing routes to safe refuge. Red Hawk's gaze blazed beneath scarred cheek. He nodded once, resolve hardening like sun-dried clay. Jed turned back, boots silent on cedar duff. Clara pressed her palm to her mother's bracelet. Heritage's thread spanning hope and healing. She met Red Hawk's eyes, two souls tethered by mercy and defiance. They rose as Holt's posse charged into clearing, smoke curling at heels. Clara hurled sage bundles into hoof prints, aroma thick as prayer. Horses balked, hoofs stamping air. Holt's face twisted in fury. Tate bellowed orders drowned by cedar smoke. Red Hawk seized Clara's hand, urging her deeper into Valley's heart. She obeyed, heart drummed steady promise beneath panic's tremor. They reached a hidden spring where cottonwoods bowed in reverence. Clara knelt and cupped water, splashing cool relief across her palm. She pressed her wrist poultice against flushed skin, each water beat a blessing. Red Hawk crouched beside her, cleansing bullet wound with willow brew and chanting words older than canyon walls. Clara inhaled sage's sharp edge, inhaled possibility's fragile breath. Shots rang against canyon's embrace. Tate's black coat gleamed in canyon mouth. Clara stiffened. Red Hawk stood, bow strung and muscles coiled. His arrowhead caught sunlight, reflecting ancestral flame. She pressed the braided bracelet to his arm, not against his wounded flesh. No words needed. She offered her mother's legacy and her own devotion as shield. A sudden roar, flames licking sky at Valley's entrance. Holt's men torched grasses, fire's amber fingers racing toward cottonwood shade. Clara's chest seized. She turned to Red Hawk, eyes bright with fear and fierce trust. He exhaled, lowering bow, and swept her into his arms. Cottonwood leaves rattled like prayer's breath. Red Hawk gathered sky from perch as a hawk soared into smoke-darkened air, calling their flight. Clara wrapped her arms around his neck, scent of sage and cedar swirling as they fled deeper into Valley's labyrinth. Flames roar behind, devouring brush and scattering embers like fallen stars. Red Hawk's jaw was set. One arm cradled sky, and the other shielded Clara's wounded wrist. She pressed her cheek to his buckskin coat, heartbeat against heartbeat. In the Valley's darkest cranny, they found refuge beneath a twisted juniper. Flames crackled beyond sight. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but her hand closed over the woven bracelet's knot. Heritage's promise unfading. Red Hawk knelt and pressed her wound's poultice. Echo of healing in desert's throat. Clara looked up and whispered in her tongue, "Thank you." His nod was gentle thunder in canyon's hush. Smoke rose in lazy columns above the valley's rim, starlight swallowed by ember's haze. Clara felt ash drift across her hair, each flake a reminder of sacrifice and hope entwined. Red Hawk whispered for her to rest, voice soft as cedar lint. Clara settled against his side, drawing strength from his steady warmth. Skies circled once more, silent sentinel, before perching on Red Hawk's bowed arm. The hawk's keen gaze scanned the valley's edge. Clara exhaled, heart pounding in new rhythm. She closed her eyes beneath juniper's shelter, scent of sage and cedar a lullaby. Fire's roar echoed like final judgment. In the hush before fate's decree, Clara May clung to woven threads of heritage and mercy, trusting that the hidden valley would hold them until dawn's light broke through smoke and fear. Smoke spiraled above the valley's rim. Posses blazed racing toward sanctuary, and only Red Hawk's vision, Clara's healing hands, and ancestral promise could carry them into Part 4's trial by fire. Firelight danced in the Comanche camp, but Clara May faced a warrior's doubt as shadows flickered across painted faces. White Owl emerged from a circle of teepees, his tall frame draped in eagle feathers and sage-streaked robes. He studied Clara with slow, steady gaze, eyes ancient embers beneath wind-worn brow. The elder's silence weighed heavier than any accusation from dusty Hollow's Gallows. Clara stood before the camp's heart fire, heart pounding like war drums in her chest. Smoke curled upward in fragrant spirals, carrying cedar and sweetgrass's ancient song. She clasped the woven bracelet, Mother's threads and Red Hawk's promise against her palm, awaiting judgment in sacred hush. Red Hawk knelt beside her, each movement reverent as deer's grace. His scarred cheek glinted in flickering light. His black hair brushed her shoulder like comfort. He murmured Comanche syllables that wove blessing around them. Clara closed her eyes, tasting cedar and earth's pulse. She recalled Blue Star's teachings, sage for spirit, yarrow for pain, willow for bleeding. Lessons passed through Mother's gentle hands. Now Heritage's circle spun anew around Clara, bridging two worlds in a single bead's glint. White Owl raised a hand, motioning Clara forward. She stepped into fire's glow, silence wrapping her like oilcloth. The elder's voice came low as canyon wind. "Why have you come to our valley, healer?" Clara's throat tightened, memory's rope burned fresh beneath her poultice. She met White Owl's gaze, knelt, and pressed the bracelet into his hands. Turquoise shimmered beneath emberlight. No words, only the hush of proof offered in woven knot. White Owl turned bracelet, tracing each bead with gnarled finger. He nodded once, acceptance steeped in tradition's brew. Singed cedar sparks drifted as Singing Dove approached, her dress woven of ochre and clay. A child clutched her skirts, small face pale beneath ratty braids. The girl coughed, hackling in her chest. Singing Dove whispered to Clara, "She cannot breathe." Clara knelt and pressed fingers to child's throat, feeling shallow pulse and bone sense. She mixed yarrow, chamomile, and mint in a wooden bowl, water drawn from the sacred spring. Each herb carried memory's echo. Mother's lullaby in desert dusk, Blue Star's whispered counsel. Clara placed poultice on child's chest, bandaging with willow strips. She laid a hand on the child's forehead, pressing in gentle rhythm. Healer's heartbeat guiding life back into waning breath. A hush fell. The girl's cough eased. Color warmed in her cheeks like dawn's promise. Singing Dove wept, pressing Clara's hand to her breast in gratitude. The camp's elders circled, nodding approval beneath fire's glow. Clara's heart fluttered, Mother's legacy honored in a stranger's breath. Sudden horns bellowed across the valley's entrance. Clara and Red Hawk stood as Sheriff Amos Tate's black coat sliced through cottonwood shade. Dr. Elias Holt at his side, clutching Winchester. The posse's spurred boots rattled on stone. Holt's spectacles glinted in firelight. Clara's chest seized. Execution's echo reborn. Red Hawk's hand dropped a bow, muscles coiling beneath buckskin. White Owl raised a staff, voice rising in ancient chant beneath cedar's breath. Red Hawk stepped before Clara, bow drawn, voice low. Stand true. His arrow shivered in readiness, each breath of vow protection. Jed Harper emerged at his flank, rifle leveled with steady calm. Singing Dove and other warriors formed ring of discipline, shields and beadwork glinting. Campfires crackled under starlit sky. Clara pressed her palm to her mother's bracelet, drawing strength from each turquoise bead. Tate spat, "Hand her over, savage. She's with an outlaw." Holt sneered, "Prophets in fear, let justice feed the town's greed." His words dripped corruption's venom. White Owl's chant smothered phrase in prayer's power. Red Hawk narrowed his gaze, arrowhead catching ember's glow. He loosed first. Arrow smacked a rifle barrel in Tate's hand, splintering steel. Clara winced at each sharp report, heart pounding in Canyon's throat. Jed fired warning shot. Bullet tore Holt's cloak, pinning Ledger to fence post. Holt staggered back, eyes wild. White Owl strode forward and plucked Ledger from iron prong. By lamp's glow, he read Morris, Holt Mining Company's records, contracts forging town's labor through terror of witchcraft. Each entry bore Holt's signature in Prophet's ink. Holt's hypocritical vow lay exposed beneath Ledger's brittle pages. Tate lurched to Holt's side, pistol brandished in trembling hand. Red Hawk lowered bow and drew his Colt, steel in hand as testimony to two worlds' unity. Jed stepped between, rifle raised in silent law's claim. Clara exhaled, heart steadying in camp's fierce embrace. White Owl closed Ledger and raised his voice in Comanche tongue, a declaration of justice's triumph over fear's tyranny. Flames leapt an echo of righteous fury. The posse fell back, faces drained of resolve. Holt spat curses, stumbling over embers as singing the oppressed child into safety. Clara knelt and gathered her poultice bowl. Each herb sent a testament to life's sacred thread. She pressed willow knot against her mother's memory. Beads glowed in emberlight like captured stars. Suddenly, distant hoofbeats rang on canyon rim. Hard stamp of laws reached beyond camp circle. White Owl's gaze met Red Hawk's, nodding in grave accord. Clara rose, footsteps echoing in sacred hush. The firelight painted her silhouette in warrior's grace. Red Hawk knelt, bow in hand, nodding at her steadied form. Trust forged in healing and blood's price paid in arrows and mercy. Jed Harper rode out to Ridge's edge, lantern held high, a single beacon in starlit void. His call echoed. A judge approaches. Dusty Hollow demands her trial. Clara's breath caught. Steel sang in chambered depths. She pressed a bracelet to her heart. Mother's blessing in Comanche, oath entwined in bead and sinew. Red Hawk stepped beside her, Colt holster but ready. White Owl raised ledger like sacred text, staff carved in eagle motif gleaming beneath moon's grace. Smoke drifted from distant campfires beyond ridge. Dusty Hollow's lawmen, igniting fear's final flame. Clara May stood in Comanche camp's heart, flames dancing shadows like ancient songs across painted faces. Her gaze rose to White Owl's calm eyes, then fell to Red Hawk's scarred scar, proof of sacrifice. She drew a breath that trembled between worlds. Firelight flickered across ledger's pages. Judge's arrival hung in canyon's hush. In the camp's sacred circle, a territorial judge rode in under starlit sky, his black coat and mounted deputies demanding Clara May's fate, threatening to rend the bond of trust woven in bracelet and blood and set the stage for Part 5's Dawn of Trust. Dawn broke over Dusty Hollow's courthouse, but Clara May stood in justice's light as oak beams glinted through stained windows. Mesquite dust swirled beyond heavy doors, rattling on spurs and dragging memory's ghosts into the chamber's hush. Clara's gaze rode the bench where Judge Hastings sat behind marble wood, robes swaying like cedar banners in a silent breeze. She pressed a woven bracelet's bead between trembling fingers, the turquoise and shell bright in dawn's glow. Holt's ledger lay open before the judge, its profit-driven entry scribed in Holt's crooked hand. Eviction contracts, labor through fear, healing band. Each line cut through prejudice like arrow through dusk. Clara inhaled sacred air and raised her chin. Sheriff Amos Tate sat to one side, black coat bowing beneath weight of failure. Dr. Elias Holt's spectacles caught stray light, his face drained to certainty. Clara's pulse keyed in quiet tempo as she addressed Judge Hastings, voice gentle as lamplight's flicker. My mother learned Comanche herbs from Blue Star. She saved lives until fear silenced her. She laid bracelet on ledger's page and turned it so beads rested against ink. Lineage's proof against witchcraft's lie. This bracelet ties me to healing's truth, she whispered. The judge's gavel hovered in the hush. Holt attempted a challenge, voice cracked like old timber, but Hastings lifted a hand in patience's grace. Clara continued, These herbs ease fever, soothe burns, healed wounds. Fear of power twisted mercy into accusation. Each word settled like seed upon fertile ground. Holt's cheeks flushed. Tate's spurs shifted on oak. Clara's heart steadied as ledgers lie unraveled in the courtroom's quiet furnace. Hastings beckoned deputies. Dr. Holt, you stand accused of inciting public fear for personal gain. Sheriff Tate, you fail to uphold law's mercy. Deputies rose. Holt's cuffs clicked on bench's edge, echoing Hope's decree. Tate bolted, coat flaring like raven's wing, spurring a deputy's chase beyond courthouse doors. Clara exhaled, shoulders trembling with relief's first breath. She pressed palm to her bracelet, honoring mother's memory and this new dawn's promise. Outside, townsfolk gathered on dusty steps, hushed as cottonwood leaves in autumn dusk. Jed Harper stood among them, hat tipped in quiet pride. Clara stepped into sunlight, each ray a benediction. She felt Red Hawk's presence in the breeze. Wind carried strength from Comanche Valley. Sky the hawk glided above, wings outstretched in victory's arc. Clara smiled. Tears wet as prairie rain. Justice had found balance in Ledger's truth and in her mother's legacy. Weeks passed in the sacred valley, where cottonwoods bowed in reverence and cedar-scented breeze whispered gratitude. Clara returned to Comanche camp with Red Hawk at her side. Scar cheek softened by dawn's glow. White Owl greeted them in a ring of teepees, Elder's eyes mirroring canyon's depth. Singing Dove pressed a bowl of sage and spring water into Clara's hands, ritual's tools for healing Earth's wounded heart. They guided Clara to a sunlit plateau where cedar planks formed a low altar. Tailor ribbons of sage lay ready for planting. Red Hawk knelt and traced patterns in soil. Spiral of life and renewal, echo of Blue Star's teachings. Clara knelt beside him, hands sinking into earthy grains. She scattered seeds of white sage in concentric rings, each seed a promise redeemed from fear's scorch. Sage blooms whisper of mercy's dawn as Clara pressed each seed into soil's embrace. Red Hawk pressed a woven bracelet into Clara's palm, now sacred artifact uniting two cultures. Clara rose and looped the bracelet around a cedar branch above altar, beads glinting in sunlit shafts. She laid Holt's ledger beneath it, ink sealed in earth's red clay as proof of trust. Singing Dove lit cedar boughs in small fire, smoke spiraling like ancestral vows. Clara exhaled, eyes drifting to Red Hawk's bowed head. She stepped forward and laid her hand on his shoulder. He rose, bow across back, and turned, face gentle beneath war bonnet's edge. Clara pressed her lips to his tan cheek, voice soft as spring's first bloom. Sweetie. The single word hung in canyon hush, bridge spanning fear's gulf and weaving hearts in unity. Sky called from cottonwood's tip, talons glinting in morning light. He soared above sage blooms, sentinel of freedom's arc. Clara watched him rise, worry's weight dissolving in boundless sky. She felt mother's legacy pulse through bracelet's loop and felt Red Hawk's steady calm beneath her palm. Together they clasped hands, gazing over valley's green embrace. Cedar smoke curled like memory's breath. Sage's fragrance wove gratitude into their souls. White Owl and Singing Dove circled them in blessings chant, voices rising in melody older than canyon walls. Jed Harper stood at camp's edge, nodding in shared triumph. Sky's cry answered, echoing through valley and beyond. Clara inhaled sun-warmed air, tasting freedom's sweet trace. She closed her eyes and whispered Blue Star's final lesson. Healing begins where fear ends. Red Hawk released a breath that trembled in cedar tune. He brushed Clara's hair from her cheek and offered silent vow. They endured together. As dusk gilded cottonwood leaves, Clara and Red Hawk walked towards cedar-dotted horizon. Healer and warrior, tethered by bead and bowstring, heart and trust. Sage bloom swayed in twilight's hush, echoing new life's soft refrain. In that quiet moment, Clara May's legacy of mercy and Red Hawk's fierce devotion became one, and Dusty Hollow's shadow finally gave way to dawn's unending promise.